I still remember the day I first walked into Godfrey Manufacturing. It was 1990, and the building seemed to breathe with industrial purpose. The hum of machinery, the smell of metal and lubricant, the steady rhythm that would become the soundtrack of my life for the next 3 decades. James Godfrey met me at the door himself. No suit, no corner office pretension. Just a man with calloused hands and clear eyes who spoke about his business with quiet pride. "This place needs someone who sees beyond spreadsheets," he told me. I was 34 then, ambitious but practical. James saw something in me, reliability perhaps, or maybe just a reflection of his own pragmatic approach. "I need someone I can trust," he said as we stood on the factory floor. "My son isn't interested in the family business, and Aubrey, my daughter, she's still in college, business administration." He chuckled. "She thinks she'll run the place someday, but she's never spent a day learning how things actually work." I couldn't have known then how prophetic those words would be. My title read Operations Manager, but from the beginning, my role defied simple definition. I was James's right hand, handling everything from vendor negotiations to HR protocols. James focused on innovation and client relationships, his strengths, while I ensured the company ran smoothly. "We make a good team, Martin," he would say, clapping me on the shoulder. And we did. Our breakthrough came in my 3rd year. I'd noticed inefficiencies in how we produced our industrial gaskets, a seemingly minor product line with steady demand. Over several weekends, I developed a modified manufacturing process that would reduce waste and increase production speed. "Show me," James said when I brought him my sketches. No skepticism, no delays, just curiosity. We refined the design together. When implemented, the results exceeded our projections. Production costs dropped by 31%, while output increased by 45%. The modified gaskets were more durable, more precise, and significantly more profitable. "This isn't just an improvement," James said. "This is a whole new product line. The Godfrey Martin Precision Series." I remember being surprised by the name. "You don't have to do that," I told him. "Credit where credit's due," he replied. "Besides, this could be our flagship product for years. I want your name on it." He was right. Within 2 years, the Precision Series accounted for nearly 30% of company revenue, with margins double our other products. We expanded operations, hired more staff, upgraded equipment. During that expansion, James called me into his office one evening after hours. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, a ritual usually reserved for celebrating major contracts. "I want to talk about your future here, Martin," he said, sliding one glass across his desk. My stomach dropped. I'd anticipated this conversation. Larger corporations had been inquiring about acquiring Godfrey Manufacturing. Instead, he pushed a document toward me. "I've had the lawyers draw up a new contract for you." It was surprisingly straightforward. A modest salary increase, improved benefits, and an unexpected addition, a royalty clause granting me 4% of all revenue generated by the Precision Series gaskets, for as long as the company produced them. "This isn't standard," I said, looking up. James nodded. "Neither is creating a product line that's transformed the company. This isn't just a bonus, Martin. It's recognition that part of this company's success belongs to you, permanently." "There's something else," he continued, his voice taking on unexpected gravity. "Aubrey graduates next year. She'll be looking for a position here." I nodded. James's daughter had visited occasionally, a bright, ambitious young woman who radiated confidence and barely concealed impatience. "She has her own ideas about the company's future," James continued carefully. "Some good, some untested. This contract protects your position and your contribution, regardless of any organizational changes down the road." I understood the subtext. James was preparing for succession planning, aware of potential conflicts ahead. "I appreciate the foresight," I said, signing the document. James smiled. "Just between us, Martin, I've seen too many family businesses tear themselves apart during transitions. I won't let that happen to Godfrey Manufacturing or to the people who helped build it." We clinked glasses and sipped our whiskey, the moment feeling both celebratory and somehow ominous. Neither of us could have predicted just how prescient his concerns would prove to be. The next decade passed in steady growth. James's health began to decline in 2007. He still came to the office, but increasingly relied on me for day-to-day operations. Aubrey had joined the company in marketing and business development, far from the operational heart. We maintained a cordial professional relationship, though I sometimes caught her watching me with thinly veiled resentment when I emerged from meetings with her father. Then came 2008, and the financial world imploded. Orders dried up overnight. Long-standing clients cancelled contracts. By March, we were hemorrhaging cash, with 3 months of reserves at most. During the emergency board meeting, financial advisors recommended immediate cuts. Lay off 30% of the workforce, suspend all investments, and consider selling the building. Aubrey, now Executive Vice President of Business Development, agreed emphatically. "We need to cut the deadweight now and focus on core competencies," she declared, using MBA jargon she favored. I stayed silent until James turned to me. "Martin, your thoughts?" I distributed folders containing an alternative proposal. "Layoffs are a last resort," I began. "They're also short-sighted." My plan was counterintuitive: reduce everyone's hours to prevent layoffs, negotiate with suppliers for extended terms, and, most crucially, convert some production capacity to create components for industries less affected by the recession. "Healthcare equipment manufacturers are still ordering," I explained. "Their suppliers can't keep up. We have the capacity to retool Line 3 to produce precision components they need." Aubrey objected. "That would require capital we don't have. The retooling costs would be covered by advance payments these clients are willing to make," I finished. "They'll pay a premium for reliability and speed." James studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Make it happen, Martin." The next 18 months were challenging. I practically lived at the plant, sleeping on the office couch many nights. But it worked. While other manufacturers closed permanently, Godfrey Manufacturing survived. By mid-2010, we were operating at full capacity, with our workforce intact and our reputation enhanced. James took satisfaction in our survival. "You saved this company, Martin," he told me. "Everyone knows it, whether they admit it or not." He passed away in his sleep 3 months later. The board meeting the following Monday confirmed what I'd expected. Aubrey Godfrey was named CEO and chairperson. "My father built something remarkable," she told senior management. "But markets evolve, and so must we. It's time for bold new direction." Her gaze passed over me without pausing. Within 2 weeks, she'd hired 3 new vice presidents, all from outside the company, all with minimal experience in our specific industry. I tried to maintain an open mind, offering operational insights and historical context for their planning. None took me up on the offer. Instead, I found myself increasingly sidelined. Meetings were scheduled during times I had standing commitments. My input was solicited and then visibly dismissed. Email threads discussing major changes somehow excluded me until decisions were finalized. The pattern was too consistent to be accidental. Long-time employees would stop by my office, closing the door to whisper concerns. Production supervisors reported conflicting directives, creating confusion. Morale began to suffer, and with it, quality metrics. I documented everything meticulously and requested a meeting with Aubrey. It took 3 weeks to get 30 minutes on her calendar. "I appreciate your concerns, Martin," she said after I outlined the operational issues. Her tone was professionally pleasant, but distinctly cold. But these growing pains are normal during transitions. My executive team has my full confidence. These aren't just growing pains, I persisted. We're seeing quality control issues that could affect client relationships. The Precision Series production in particular. The Precision Series, she interrupted, an edge entering her voice. Yes, my father's and your great collaboration. Don't worry, we recognize its importance. It's not about recognition, I said carefully. It's about maintaining the quality standards that made it successful. The new production director has already changed key processes without consulting the supervisors who've been running that line for years. Aubrey smiled thinly. We're modernizing, Martin. Change can be uncomfortable, especially for those who've become accustomed to certain ways of doing things. The implication was clear. I was being labeled a relic, resistant to change. This wasn't about operational concerns. It was about authority and control, about erasing her father's influence. 2 days later, a modified process on the Precision Series line resulted in a 15% rejection rate, unprecedented for our flagship product. I documented the failure and sent it to the new production VP as instructed. I received no response. The following week, a major client called to report defects in a recent shipment. I forwarded their complaint to the Vice President of Client Relations, copied to Aubrey given the client's importance. Within an hour, I was called to a meeting with both executives. This should have been handled through proper channels, the VP admonished. I did send it through proper channels, I replied evenly. I'm following up because the client is threatening to return the entire shipment. That's a $380,000 order at risk. We'll handle it, Aubrey said dismissively. After the meeting, I discreetly called my contact at the client company to suggest specific technical questions they should ask. Questions that would reveal whether the team truly understood the product specifications. It was a small act of corporate rebellion, but necessary. The company James had built was being dismantled by people who didn't understand what made it successful. The end, when it came, was almost a relief. Aubrey scheduled a late Friday meeting, cryptically described as a strategic realignment discussion. I arrived to find Aubrey, the new HR director, and a security officer waiting. Aubrey, Martin began without preamble. As part of our organizational restructuring, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate your position. The HR director slid a folder across the table. This contains your severance package, which is generous given your tenure. We'll need your building access card and company devices before you leave today. I sat perfectly still, absorbing the calculated coldness of the moment. 34 years of service ended in a sterile conference room with security present. May I ask about the operational transition plan? I inquired calmly. There are several critical processes and vendor relationships that require specific knowledge. We've developed comprehensive transition protocols, Aubrey interrupted. The executive team will manage any outstanding operational matters. I nodded, then opened the severance folder. The package was financially generous, 6 months' salary, extended benefits, a lump sum for unused vacation. All contingent on signing a non-disparagement agreement. What the folder didn't mention, what Aubrey had either forgotten or never knew, was my royalty agreement for the Precision Series. I closed the folder. I'll need time to review this with my attorney before signing. Aubrey's expression tightened. Of course, but we need your access card and devices today. The security officer, a young man who'd always greeted me warmly, now looked deeply uncomfortable as he followed me to my office. I packed methodically, separating personal items from company property. In the bottom drawer, I found a bottle of 18-year-old Macallan that James and I had planned to open when we hit our 20-year revenue milestone. We'd achieved it 2 months after his passing. The bottle had remained unopened. I placed it in my box. Technically company property, perhaps, but I doubted Aubrey would miss it. We walked through the production floor to reach the exit. Word had spread rapidly. Every employee we passed stopped to watch. Some nodded solemnly. A few looked away, embarrassed. One older supervisor stepped forward and shook my hand silently. At home, I called my attorney, Benjamin Caldwell. Ben had been my friend since college and had reviewed my original contract back in 1990. "They did what?" he exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Without any discussion of transition planning. That's organizational malpractice." "It's done," I replied simply. "But there's a complication they may not have considered." I reminded him about the royalty clause. "It's not contingent on employment. It's a lifetime royalty for the product's creator, as long as they produce and sell it." There was a momentary silence before Ben chuckled. "Oh, that's beautiful. Does Aubrey even know about this clause?" "I'm not certain," I admitted. "James handled it personally. The company lawyers should have flagged it during termination, but given how rushed this seemed..." "Let me review everything before you sign anything," Ben advised. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. On Monday morning, I reviewed the severance documents. What was conspicuously absent was any mention of the royalty agreement. Ben made some discreet inquiries with their legal department. The junior lawyer he spoke with had no idea what he was talking about. They were scrambling to assess their position. We drafted a letter acknowledging the termination of employment, but firmly asserting the continued validity of the royalty agreement. We requested an audit of Precision Series sales and clear protocol for ongoing quarterly royalty payments. The response came quickly. The very next day, I received a call from Godfrey Manufacturing's chief legal counsel. "Mr. Brennan," he began formally, "we've received communication regarding a purported royalty agreement." "Not purported," I corrected mildly. "Contractually established and continuously honored for 30 years. A brief pause. "Yes. Well, we've located the original documentation. There appears to be some oversight in our recent discussions." Translation: they hadn't done their homework and were now scrambling. "We'd like to propose a meeting to discuss a potential buyout of this royalty arrangement. A single lump sum that would provide you with significant immediate capital." They wanted to eliminate the ongoing financial obligation and the administrative headache of regularly paying the person Aubrey had just dismissed. "I'm open to a conversation," I said. "Though I should note that the Precision Series continues to be your highest margin product line, with projections for continued growth according to last quarter's reports." Another pause, longer this time. I had just demonstrated that despite my termination, I still had detailed knowledge of the company's financials. The meeting was held at Ben's office. Their opening offer was a lump sum equivalent to approximately 5 years of projected royalty payments. Our counter-proposal was carefully constructed, a larger lump sum calculated on 10 years of projected royalties, with an additional kicker clause that would provide supplemental payments if the product line exceeded certain revenue thresholds. By the end, we'd reached a compromise, an 8-year royalty valuation with the kicker clause intact, plus a consulting retainer for the first year to ensure knowledge transfer regarding manufacturing processes. What they didn't realize was that the consulting retainer was far more valuable to me than they knew. It provided continued access to Godfrey Manufacturing's vendor network and client relationships. The official announcement of my departure came via a terse company-wide email describing my decision to pursue other opportunities. No mention of contributions or institutional knowledge lost. For the first month after my departure, I did nothing professional at all. I took a long-delayed fishing trip. I renovated my house. I slept past 5 a.m. for the first time in decades. The consulting retainer required minimal effort, occasional calls to advise on technical issues. I answered honestly and thoroughly, watching as the new team gradually implemented processes I'd established years earlier, now presented as innovative solutions. During these calls, I gathered information. Not confidential data, I maintained strict ethical boundaries, but insights into how the company was functioning under new leadership. Vendor relationships were fraying as Aubrey's team pushed for aggressive price concessions without understanding the partnerships I'd cultivated. Key employees were leaving. Quality metrics were slipping as standardized processes were abandoned in favor of efficiency improvements. During one consulting call, the production manager remarked, "Everything was smoother before. These new vendors just don't deliver the same quality." New vendors? I inquired casually. Yeah, the executive team consolidated our supplier network, said it would increase our leverage and improve margins. He sighed. Instead, we've got components that barely meet spec and constant delivery delays. After the call, I sat in my home office, turning this information over. I knew these vendors, had worked with many for decades. They were small to mid-sized operations, often family-owned, with specialized expertise. And now they were being squeezed by corporate efficiency experts who saw them as interchangeable parts, not business partners. An idea began to form, not revenge exactly, but a new direction that would leverage my unique position and knowledge. The next day, I called Marcus Chen, who'd supplied critical parts for multiple Godfrey product lines for 25 years. "Martin," he exclaimed warmly, "don't tell me you're already bored with retirement." "Not retirement," I corrected. "Transition. How are things with the new Godfrey management?" Marcus's tone changed immediately. Challenging. They're demanding 15% price reductions while increasing order quantities and shortening delivery windows. My margins are practically non-existent. "Are you looking for alternative clients?" I asked. "Actively," he confirmed. "But Godfrey still represents about 30% of our business. It's not easily replaced." "What if I could help with that?" I suggested. "I'm considering a new venture. Consulting, initially, but with potential for more." 2 weeks and 12 similar conversations later, Brennan Industrial Solutions was born. On paper, a consulting firm specializing in manufacturing operations. In practice, a lifeline for vendors being squeezed by Godfrey's new regime. I leased a modest office and hired 2 former Godfrey employees who'd recently pursued other opportunities. My initial clients were entirely vendors from my former company's supply chain. My knowledge of manufacturing processes allowed me to match these suppliers with new customers who appreciated their specialized capabilities. For the vendors, this reduced their dependence on Godfrey while maintaining revenue. For me, it built a network of grateful partners. 6 months in, Brennan Industrial Solutions had expanded to 5 employees and a client list extending beyond former Godfrey vendors. We developed a reputation for understanding operational realities and providing practical solutions. It was around this time that I received an unexpected call from Caroline Matthews, the VP of Client Relations, who had replaced me. "Martin," she began without preamble, "we have a situation with Midwest Energy. They're threatening to cancel their contract over quality issues with the custom fittings." Midwest Energy had been one of Godfrey's largest clients for over a decade. The custom fittings were variants of the Precision series. "That sounds serious," I replied neutrally. "How can I help?" "You had a relationship with their technical team," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "They're not responding to my calls. We need someone who can get through to them." I considered declining. This wasn't my problem anymore, but that wasn't who I was. I'll reach out to them, I agreed. But resolving the quality issues will require technical changes on your end. Anything, Caroline promised. Just get them back to the table. My call to Midwest Energy's chief engineer was returned within the hour. Ryan McDonald and I had worked together for years. Martin, he greeted me warmly. Good to hear your voice. I was sorry about your departure from Godfrey. Change happens, I replied diplomatically. I understand there are issues with the custom fittings. Ryan's tone hardened. That's putting it mildly. The last 3 shipments had failure rates approaching 30%. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. I arrived early and was shown the defective fittings. The problem was immediately apparent. Inconsistent material density resulting from improper temperature regulation. Caroline arrived with Godfrey's new production director, who grew increasingly defensive, offering explanations that revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of the manufacturing process. I intervened. This pattern typically indicates variation in the sintering process, specifically temperature regulation. The modifications you've made to increase production speed have created uneven heating zones. The production director started to object, but Caroline cut him off. What would it take to resolve this? She asked Ryan directly. Return to the original manufacturing protocol, Ryan replied flatly. The one Martin developed. No shortcuts, no efficiency improvements that compromise integrity. Caroline looked at me pleadingly. Let me suggest a path forward, I offered. I could provide consulting support to help identify exactly where the current process is deviating from the established protocol. The agreement was formalized the next day, an emergency consulting contract at triple my previous rate. I spent a week at the plant, documenting where the new team had modified critical processes in ways that saved time but compromised quality. Most of my recommendations were implemented immediately. The production director was reassigned within a month, and Midwest Energy remained a client. What Godfrey's management didn't know was that during that week in the plant, I had numerous quiet conversations with employees at all levels. I didn't recruit them or disparage the company. I simply listened to their frustrations and occasionally mentioned that Brennan Industrial Solutions was always interested in experienced manufacturing professionals. 3 of them joined my firm within 6 months. This pattern repeated over the next 2 years. Godfrey Manufacturing, under Aubrey's aggressive targets, continued to alienate clients and vendors. When crises emerged, they would call me for emergency consulting. I would solve the immediate problem professionally and quietly strengthen my own business in the process. Brennan Industrial Solutions expanded steadily. I positioned us as experts in adjacent markets and specialized applications. The turning point came 3 years after my dismissal. A major infrastructure bill had passed Congress, creating unprecedented demand for industrial components in renewable energy. Godfrey Manufacturing was positioning to capture this market opportunity. Their primary target was a contract with Heartland Renewables for precision components for turbine assemblies, components that fell within the capability of the manufacturing process I had developed decades earlier. I learned of this because Heartland approached Brennan Industrial Solutions directly. Their procurement director had previously worked with me and valued our reputation for quality. We're considering several suppliers, she explained during our initial meeting, including Godfrey Manufacturing. I understand you have history there. I spent most of my career with them, I acknowledged. They have significant production capacity and a long track record. But, she prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation. I chose my words carefully. Every company evolves. Godfrey's current management has chosen to prioritize growth and efficiency. Those are valid business objectives, but not always compatible with consistent quality and precision components, she finished. That's what we're hearing from others as well. I neither confirmed nor denied this. Instead, I outlined our approach, emphasizing rigorous quality control, our experienced team, and our willingness to develop a dedicated production process specifically for their requirements. Our proposal wasn't the lowest bid. In fact, it was approximately 12% higher than Godfrey's aggressive pricing, but it included elements they couldn't match: a quality guarantee backed by performance bonds, a dedicated project manager with renewable energy experience, and a manufacturing protocol optimized for the unique stress profiles of wind turbine applications. 2 weeks later, Heartland awarded us the contract. The next day, Godfrey Manufacturing's stock dropped 7%. I took no public satisfaction in this. When a business reporter called seeking comment on beating my former employer, I simply stated that we were focused on delivering for our client, not on industry competition. In just 3 years, Brennan Industrial Solutions had grown from a one-man operation to a respected manufacturer competing successfully against an established company with 30 times our resources. We'd done so, not through cutthroat tactics, but by embodying the business principles I'd learned from James himself: quality over quantity, relationships over transactions, long-term stability over short-term gains. 5 years after my dismissal, an unexpected email arrived from James Andrews, chairman of the board at Godfrey Manufacturing. The subject: confidential discussion request. I'd never met Andrews personally, but knew he was one of the original investors who had backed James decades earlier. Now in his 80s, he had remained on the board as a link to the company's founding principles. His message was brief: Mr. Brennan, circumstances at Godfrey Manufacturing have reached a critical juncture. I would appreciate a private conversation. This matter requires discretion. We met for breakfast the following morning. Andrews was an elegant, white-haired man with alert eyes and a formal demeanor. "Thank you for meeting," he began. "I've followed your career with interest since your departure from Godfrey." "I'm flattered by your attention," I replied neutrally. "You've built something impressive in a remarkably short time. Your reputation for quality and innovation is spreading throughout the industry." Andrews sighed deeply. "Which brings me to the purpose of our meeting. Godfrey Manufacturing is in trouble. Serious trouble." I waited silently. "The renewable energy contract loss was the beginning," he explained. "Since then, we've lost 3 more major clients. Quality issues continue despite multiple leadership changes. Our stock has fallen 43% over 18 months. And now, 2 private equity firms are circling with hostile takeover offers." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I still cared about the company James had built. "Aubrey Godfrey tendered her resignation last week," Andrews continued. "The board refused to accept it immediately. It would tank the stock further, but we've agreed she will transition to an advisory role while we search for new leadership." I understood the direction. "Mr. Andrews, if you're considering me as a CEO candidate, I should be clear that I have no interest in returning to Godfrey. My company requires my full attention, and the circumstances of my departure would make such a return complicated." Andrews shook his head. "Not CEO, something else entirely." He leaned forward. "We're exploring strategic alternatives, including potential acquisition by a company that understands our industry and could restore our operational excellence. A company like Brennan Industrial Solutions." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You want me to buy Godfrey Manufacturing?" "To save it," he corrected gently, "from being dismantled by private equity vultures who will sell off the valuable parts and discard the rest, including most of the workforce." The irony was overwhelming. 5 years earlier, I'd been escorted from the building by security. Now the board chairman was offering me the keys to the kingdom. "It's not that simple," I pointed out. "Godfrey is still much larger than my company. The financing alone would be challenging." "There are ways to structure such a transaction," Andrews responded, sliding a folder across the table. The board is prepared to be extremely flexible given the alternatives we're facing. The following months were intense. By day, I ran my company. By night, I delved into Godfrey Manufacturing's operations, finances, and market position. The structure we proposed was uncommon, but elegant. A true merger of equals, despite the disparity in size, with my management team taking operational control while preserving the Godfrey name and brand. The Godfrey board approved unanimously. Andrews called to deliver the news himself. "There's one more thing you should know," he added. "Aubrey Godfrey voted in favor of the merger." This surprised me. I would have expected her to oppose it vigorously. "She's learned some difficult lessons," Andrews replied. "And I think she finally understands what her father saw in you. She specifically mentioned that the merger would best serve the interests of the employees and her father's legacy." That meeting took place in James Godfrey's old office, now Aubrey's, soon to be vacated. She greeted me with a formality that couldn't quite mask her discomfort. "Thank you for coming, Martin," she began. "This can't be easy for either of us." "Life rarely arranges itself for our emotional convenience," I replied mildly. A hint of a smile touched her lips. Still philosophical. She took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology for failing to recognize and value what you contributed, what you and my father built together." "Thank you," I said simply. "Your father was a remarkable man and a true mentor. I've tried to honor his approach to business in my own company." "I know," she nodded. "I've researched Brennan Industrial Solutions extensively. What's surprising is that you've built something that embodies my father's values more authentically than his own company managed to do under my leadership." "We all learn through experience," I replied. "Some lessons are more expensive than others." $400 million in market capitalization, she said with a rueful smile. "Quite an expensive education." She opened her desk drawer and removed a familiar bottle, the 18-year-old Macallan I'd taken from my office during my final departure. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, placing it on the desk. Security reported it missing, but I instructed them to let it go. It seemed a small thing, given the circumstances. I studied the bottle, memories flooding back of late nights planning with James. "Your father and I were saving this for a significant milestone. We never got the chance to open it together. Perhaps today represents a different kind of milestone," Aubrey suggested, producing 2 crystal tumblers. "The closing of one chapter and the opening of another." She poured 2 modest servings. We raised our glasses in silent acknowledgement of all that had transpired. "To new beginnings," she offered. "And to honored foundations," I added. The merger was announced the following week. The business press covered it extensively, focusing on the unusual structure and the dramatic narrative of my return to Godfrey Manufacturing. I declined all interview requests, focusing instead on the integration process ahead. I don't view this outcome as revenge, though I understand why others might frame it that way. I see it rather as a restoration of value, of principles, of a business philosophy that recognizes the intrinsic connection between how you treat people and the results you ultimately achieve. Most employees don't realize how valuable their innovations are until it's too late, says financial advisor Grace Teller. Document everything, and if you create recurring value, tie your compensation to it, ideally through royalties, IP, or profit sharing. When James Godfrey included that royalty clause in my contract 34 years ago, he wasn't just compensating me for a product innovation. He was teaching me about the power of long-term thinking, about creating agreements that align interests over decades rather than quarters. When he spoke of protecting me from organizational changes, he was demonstrating the foresight that distinguished him as a business leader. The lesson I'd share from this experience is simple but profound. In business as in life, true security doesn't come from titles or organizational charts. It comes from creating genuine value, documenting your contributions, and ensuring that your economic interests align with those you serve. The modern corporate world often emphasizes speed over substance, growth over stability, and cost-cutting over value creation. These approaches can generate impressive short-term results, but sustainable success, the kind that builds generational wealth and enduring institutions, requires a longer view. If you're building a career or a business, focus on creating intellectual property that generates ongoing value. Document your contributions meticulously. Negotiate agreements that reflect your true worth to the enterprise. And perhaps most importantly, maintain impeccable ethical standards, especially when, others around you lose their way. The path may not always be straight or smooth. You may face setbacks, betrayals, or periods of uncertainty. But with patience, preparation, and principled action, you can navigate even the most challenging transitions on your own terms. If you've experienced a similar situation in your career, whether a difficult transition, an unexpected opportunity, or a chance to redefine your professional path, I'd love to hear your story. Please share your experience in the comments below. And if you found value in this account, please subscribe to Goldprint for more insights on building financial resilience through life's unexpected turns. Together, we can transform setbacks into stepping stones toward greater security and fulfillment. True success isn't about how you rise after you fall. It's about what you build after they count you out.